Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of What Did the Patient Say with Doctors Dana and Lauren Brindisi, sisters and owners of Carolina Functional Neurology Center. We are bringing you inside information from real conversations we have with patients on a daily basis. We get asked the same questions and want to spread the truth on health and healing because we believe everyone deserves to know the answers.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in again to another episode of What Did the Patient Say? Today, Dr. Dana and I are going to be talking about all the things we hear our patients say that they think is normal, but is not. So we're going to kind of deconstruct that a little bit and hopefully help some of you better understand symptoms you may be having, maybe you've had for a long time. Maybe your mom or your sibling, somebody else has it too. So you kind of chalked it up to being normal, but it may not be. What's one of the common ones you hear, Dr. Dana?
I think one of the most common ones that I hear is when people say that they stand up and they feel dizzy. I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past episodes, but a lot of people experience it. And I think something that you and I talk about a lot is that people take these things that may be common and chalk it up to normal or like typical response to whatever it is that they're doing. But I think this dizziness one is a big one because you can experience it acutely, right? Like you're dehydrated and maybe you experience it one day, right? We can maybe consider that to be normal. But if it's something that happens to you on a daily or a weekly basis, then that would be moving in a direction of probably not quote unquote normal, but maybe not something that you would even consider seeking help for. But what we know is from a functional perspective that can be an indication that there are things happening in the brain, there's things happening with your blood flow that you might want to address before it gets too bad. Because then we see patients where maybe that turns into into their 40s, 50s, and they're chalking up like brain fog or some cognitive things to be normal for their age. But we know that if people aren't getting good fuel delivery and blood flow, maybe it started with, oh yeah, I always felt dizzy when I stood up. I've known that since I was little. And now we're dealing with some cognitive decline. And in our world, we immediately think, what's happening with their blood flow? So I think that's a huge one that we hear from patients a lot.
Yeah, I like what you kind of said before, but I've always had that. So I feel like I hear that term a lot too. We ask maybe about pain, we ask about memory, sleep habits. I always have had a terrible sleep schedule. I'm always waking up a couple times out of the night. I always feel tired when I wake up, and people say it with that, tone as if they go, oh, they just kind of brush it off because it's normal to them in terms of what they're experiencing on an everyday basis, but it's not normal when we're looking at optimum and trying to optimize your function. These are really important things to definitely take into consideration. And I think that's a big one, the standing up and feeling dizzy or lightheaded. We see a lot of autonomic patients, so we do hear that a lot. The missing meals and feeling irritable, getting hangry all the time if you miss a meal, that's a sign of issues with blood sugar. Once in a while, okay, maybe you really didn't eat great for several days in a row and you may experience that, especially, like Dr. Dana said, if you're dehydrated, acutely is one thing, but when it's happening on a regular basis, daily, weekly, monthly, and you can really even quantify that. I feel like when I ask patients about this and how often it's happening, especially the dizzy and lightheaded, my next question is, how often? Is this happening daily, weekly, monthly? And I sometimes am so surprised when I have patients who are chalking it up to normal and they go, yeah, it probably happens about 50% of the time. But they've been experiencing it for so long. So of course, to their credit, it is normal to them, but it's something that needs to be improved upon. And for all of our listeners, if you're experiencing some of these things, it's not something to just brush off just because you've had it going on for a long time or your mom had it, or your sister had it. It doesn't mean it's normal, and seeking out some advice from somebody who is educated on these things and can really help you move forward with them could make a huge difference in your life, even if you're not, a patient that's super symptomatic and has, a ton of complications going on. If you're not just functioning optimally, there might be some really easy things that can be done to help you feel better.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people don't know that a lot of these things are connected, right? So the fact that maybe it started where you had dizziness and now you're having cognitive decline, or you always get hangry and now you're struggling with exercise tolerance or pain or significant fatigue, right? A lot of times people don't match those or marry those things together as like a cause and effect, but we know consistently those things are a direct result of maybe something else that they experienced in the past, which is why it's so important to take a full health history from patients and making sure that you're digging into some of those nitty gritties. Like you said, how long does it happen? How long does it last? Have you, how long did you experience this when you were little? Is this new? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Is it staying the same? What does all of that look like for the individual patient? Because that gives us a lot of information to help them, and kind of digging in, because I think we hear a lot from patients where they're surprised when we ask them certain questions and they're like, oh, why has nobody else asked me that? And we're like, I don't know. I don't know, but we know that these things are very connected. I think the blood sugar one is a huge one, because so many people are like, I feel hangry in the conversation, or their spouse or their parent or whomever is like, oh yeah, they're hangry. And, we always have the conversation of, you should never feel any different when you eat. The experience should be, I'm hungry, I ate something and I'm not hungry anymore. It shouldn't be, I ate something and now I have a lot of energy, or I ate something and I have no energy and I need to take a nap, or I ate something and I feel like, all the lights came on in my brain and I can work and do all of this stuff, right? I think for us and our perspective, looking at everything neurological, we always talk about, what does the brain need to create neuroplasticity? What does the brain need to function appropriately? We need fuel, and we need oxygen, and we need stimulation, right? So when we talk about blood sugar, right, most of us use fuel to the brain is in the form of glucose. And I always tell my patients, we're not talking about Snickers bars. We're talking about true, like the glucose molecule and how things get broken down in your system. Yeah. If you are in ketosis, then your brain uses ketones as energy. We need oxygen, and then we need stimulation. So it's not a big leap to say that some of these things that we're talking about are directly correlated to brain function, cognition, and all of these other symptoms, dizziness, headaches.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, especially because we see patients often years after they started developing symptoms, and it's not always as simple as, I had a head injury and now I'm symptomatic. A lot of times it's, why is this happening? And we have to kind of peel back layers and understand their history. And we start recognizing that it maybe is these little things over time that keep building up that become, quote unquote, your new normal. And then we just keep pushing through. I always say to patients, the brain is about, it always wants to keep us stable, but we're going to keep powering through things. So until it becomes so symptomatic that
it's a good compensator.
Yeah, it's really, really good at compensating and just saying, let's just keep moving, let's keep moving. And then you kind of reset to this new normal. And those little things over time can build up and become something very big. So it's important, I would say, especially, the dizziness and lightheadedness, the blood sugar, exercise intolerance, changes in your sleep. What else do you think is some really important things for everyone to be keeping an eye on?
Oh man, I think those are big ones. I think the other one maybe that we didn't touch on is pain. You know, I think people pain and cognition. I think that people chalk pain up to, you know, we hear a lot like, oh, it's probably normal for my age, or people are being told that by somebody else, right? They're being told like, well, you know, you're getting older, that's going to happen. And the thing that my response to every patient that tells me that is it though? Because it doesn't happen to everybody. If it was normal, if it was a normal response, then every human being who reaches the age of 50 should have knee pain, cognitive changes, you know, all of these things that we're talking about, right? But we don't see that. That's not true, right? It might be common, but what's the driving factor for that?
Yeah, and a lot of that's lifestyle.
Yes.
And a lot of us in America are living very busy, very stressful lifestyles with not great diets. And now it's becoming normal comparatively when you have, you know, the masses dealing with these issues, but it's not normal in terms of you know, you can live a healthier life and definitely feel better. And it doesn't have to be chalked up to age either.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point previously about stress. Is I was talking to a therapist once and they told me, they're like, stress is cumulative, right? And I think that a lot of people don't look at it that way. So people look at stress as like, I had a stressful event, right? I had a family emergency, or I lost my job, or I got sick, right? And people take it in chunks. Whereas, you know, as we get older, we're exposed to more and more stressors, and stressors can be a lot of different things, right? You can have physical, mental, emotional, sexual, chemical stressors, right? Like there's so much stuff that people are exposed to as time goes on. And all of that does take a toll on your body. And it's not just like a hit and then everything goes back to normal. It's like, if we don't regulate our stress responses, then it just kind of builds up. Because a lot of people ask like, well, how did this happen? Right? Or, you know, I don't attribute something that happened 20 years ago to how I feel right now, but it builds on it. And if it's not addressed, then, or if you keep chalking it up to, well, and that's just normal, and you're like pushing these things under the rug, then you get to the point where you can't push it under the rug anymore, right? It's to a point where you have to seek help. And it's like, we want people to seek help before it becomes this major issue for them, right? Because we can fine tune things before they, you know, develop a full-blown disorder or disease or whatever, right? And we're at least setting them up to be much more functional and in a better position, you know, moving forward in their life in general.
Yeah, I agree. It's like lifestyle medicine, right? We all should be, you know, and a lot of us talk about preventative medicine and things like that, but I think this is a really important component of that, is getting a full evaluation. I mean, I love our intake forms because we do a brain health and neurotransmitter assessment form, and we do a metabolic assessment form. So we're digging really deep and asking different questions that maybe ones you wouldn't be coming in otherwise discussing. But from a functional perspective, we're really looking more holistically. So all these pieces really matter, even if it's not the main reason that you're coming in. And what I love about that is when I do a health history, it really helps me start to dig deeper and ask questions that, again, I maybe wouldn't have otherwise asked for the patient coming in with a certain chief complaint. But when we can start putting some of these pieces together and understanding, even like you said, Dr. Dana, like stressful events. I just did a health history with a patient who she's had a long road, and we were kind of going through her timeline, and she's got chronic Lyme, and we sort of went back to when she originally got the tick bite and went through time in terms of her symptoms waxing and waning. And the one really common thread that I mentioned to her was there were all very stressful events that happened right around the time all of your symptoms started increasing. So I was explaining to her, well, there's things we're going to do from a neurological perspective because she has a lot of tremors. So we want to do things really reintegrating, you know, her cerebellum and different aspects of her motor coordination. But from more of lifestyle medicine side, we need to have a conversation about how she's handling and managing stress on an everyday basis, and what she can do on a regular basis to make sure she's getting herself equipped for the next time that a stressful event comes her way. Hopefully it does not overflow her bucket and cause her nervous system to get all riled up, all overactive, and make her symptomatic. I say that a lot to patients. I go, we can't always change what's going on around us, but we can try to change how we respond to it. And that's what's really important. I mean, for me personally, things like yoga changed my life and my ability to manage stress. And because it's coming at all of us. So we have to figure out ways that we're going to be able to handle those things. And that has a cumulative effect on our ability to live a happy and healthy life, even when stressful stuff comes our way.
Yeah, we should do one of these and talk about like the default mode networks and things in the brain that really get primed and help people, right? And, we teeter back and forth on some of these networks in the brain that help us to, stay on task and be oriented and get things done, right? But then we also need things to kick in so that we can relax and have appropriate neurotransmitter releases and things like that. And people don't, a lot of people probably don't know about that stuff, but it's like when you do things like yoga or meditation or go for a walk or do deep breathing and do things that are going to activate the systems in your brain that allow you to manage stress responses, right? And doing it before you enter that stressful event.
Yeah.
Because it is a big one. Or maybe we just talk about stress in general, because I think we always end up having this conversation. But what, I think overarching today is to, listen to your body and don't always chalk up these common things or symptoms to be quote unquote normal, and then pay attention to like, are you dealing with just one of these things, or do you notice some of these other things, and are they related? And is there somebody that you have to reach out to just say, hey, I'm not sure this is good for me. Is there anything that I can do now so that it doesn't become, a bigger issue?
Yeah, I agree. And if you don't have that, that person you trust, finding a good provider that you do trust and that takes the time to listen, and, you have the capability of reaching out to them without feeling like it's a burden or that you're just a number, having somebody you trust and making sure, and, we want people to ask. I always tell my patients, you can shoot me an email. If I don't get back right away, I will get to it. But please, if you need anything, I'm always here for you. And I think we want everybody to know that not just we're here for them, but finding a provider that you trust is important.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. Because I think when we do that, it's really cool to see when patients reach out and things that they bring up after the fact, right? Like we always talk about educating people so that they're aware of what is going on in their own body and they have some empowerment to take action in their own health, right? Because a lot of times people are just told whatever the doctor says and then they're just like, okay, this is how it is, right? But it's always interesting to me when, we open up the door to patients to say, whatever you need, just come and ask us if you have a question. And the questions that people start to ask that they probably would never have asked before because it never would have triggered in their brain, like, oh, should that have happened? I don't know, is this okay? I don't know.
Yeah, and I love that too. Yeah, it's like forming those relationships with people and being able to help them, not just necessarily for the reason they originally came in, but you can see the light bulbs kind of go on as we start talking about how everything's interconnected. And I always say, if you think of anything you want to tell me, just let me know. Everything matters. So, just let me know if there's something you're concerned about, and I'll do what I can to try to help.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us know. We definitely love your comments, and if you guys have any topics you really want us to talk about, we would absolutely love your feedback. So please like it, share it. watch us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll keep these going. We thank you guys so much for all the positive feedback.